As the oil and gas industry grows, there are several concerns which persist in its expansion, including regulatory, market and security risks. Persistent reports of pilferage, accidents on oil and gas sites, and worker safety considerations are some of the major risks which the industry has to face. In the past week, India Risk Report had touched upon several of the challenges which the industry has faced. And to further expound on these issues, today's episode seeks to provide a wider depth to the complexities which the oil and gas sector is facing, including global threats such as cybersecurity considerations, expansion of our critical infrastructure, and roadmaps for the upliftment of this sector.
Hello and welcome to another episode of India Risk Report. And in this episode, we are looking at the safety and security of oil and gas installations across India. The oil and gas sector is amongst the top 6 areas of industrial focus in India, more so and importantly because oil and gas is a major component of India's energy demands and also India's economic calculations. But an area of equal concern is the fact that the safety and security of oil and gas installations, both at the point from where they are brought to the average Indian citizen and across to the Indian market, and the routes that they travel through are not necessarily safe. Some have faced attacks in the past, but another feature that has begun to emerge is the possibility of the use of high-tech technology to impact on the oil and gas sector, as well as pilferages that could and continue to hamper the total smooth flow of oil and gas resources. And we have two well-informed experts. We have Mr. N.K. Bansal with us. Mr. Bansal is the Director Oil Refining and Marketing for the Federation of Indian Petroleum Industry. And we have Mr. Shyam Mehra with us once again on the show. Mr. Mehra is a former IPS officer and Secretary Security to the Government of India. I'll go to you, Mr. Mehra, sir, first. There are concerns that the storage, handling, transportation of oil products is a problem area not just in India, but across the world. You have oil thefts that cost the Chinese oil industry more than $124 million in 2006 and leading up to something 2,877 arrests in China itself. So pilferage thefts is a big area of concern. Equally important in our case is the fact that oil and gas industry has been facing in the past and could face in future militant attacks on delivery pipelines and the storage facilities. So this is a growing area of concern where not much is spoken about, but it obviously has an impact on the total resources available to us. What are your views? Is this a global phenomena, or is India doing any lesser or any more?
The attack on energy infrastructure in general and oil and natural gas in particular is a global phenomenon. In fact, it has been documented by some sources that since the 1980s, there have been an average of around 270 attacks on energy infrastructure, and much of it on oil and natural gas. This is around the globe. And we have areas across geographies around the world affected by this melee of attacks. Now, there have been some near catastrophic attacks, but not an attack as yet which has proved to be of which has led to incalculable loss. So as far as the stealing and theft of oil and natural gas goes, particularly oil, this is a melee affecting a lot of places, particularly Nigeria. Nigeria is known for oil theft and its sale in the black market, and that is called bunkering. So Nigeria has lost billions of dollars of revenue, and sometimes as much as 10% of its production, 10 to 15% of its production, because of losses in theft and what is known there as bunkering.
Okay. Mr. Bansal, since you are specifically having expertise in the refining aspect and connected with the petroleum industry, they say there is an awful shortage of refining capacity in India. And linked with that is that our energy requirements and the speed with which we are developing projects, there is a need to attend to not just enhancing the refining capacity, but also the safety and security of those refining capacities. So what steps are in place for that?
Maruf, first of all, I would like to say that in India, there is no shortage of refining capacity.
Oh, so my information is wrong.
Yeah. India, in fact, has a refining capacity which is much more than what we are required for meeting Indian requirements as on today for all petroleum products. In fact, India is exporting also petroleum products because they are surplus in the country. So therefore, the question comes that when the refining capacity is adequate, the availability of production of the petroleum product is adequate, then obviously when it is available freely in the country, there is no subsidy, there is nothing like left out. Kerosene demand is declining, which was one of the major product which was being pilfered and blended with other products. So kerosene demand, because of the gas rising, etc., is not there at all, or it is reducing at a very drastic speed. So the incidences of the petroleum product, stealing, or you can say the pilferage or etc., they are very much on the decline as far as from the oil gas industry, refining industry is concerned.
But there are figures that are quite alarming. It says that petroleum related pilferages, there was a very large amount that was reported in the case of pilferages that took place in Maharashtra. They say there is a mafia that runs in Maharashtra which does oil and petroleum pilferage. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, we have also gone through those reports. We are also aware of these reports, but the fact is that these are not occurring at the refinery end, but obviously during the transportation of oil. And through the pipeline especially, I would like to say, pipeline area is one area which is highly prone and exposed to this kind of fraudulent tappings and taking out products. Yes. And for that purpose, oil industry, whether it is the Indian Oil or any other cane, or you can say, they have a regularly defined system of patrolling the pipelines. So no particular milestone of pipeline is left without any patrolling. Two persons, they patrol in the opposite direction, cross each other, exchange the reports, then go, and this is happening. And obviously, in each state, Director General of Police himself is taking the security, the briefing along with the oil industry. A separate meeting is already existing.
So to sum up, you on behalf of the Federation would probably take a position that in terms of thefts and pilferages, things are pretty well attended to and the situation is quite safe and well handled.
Yes, well handled, and there are laid down systems, procedure even at the state level, which are active, and they're taking care of the situation.
Okay, Mr. Mehra sir, there is operational safety and security issues that again are linked with the oil industry, oil and petroleum industry. For instance, the spill in Chennai, along the Chennai coast in 2017, or even the Uran Creek oil spill near Mumbai. Now, this obviously is beyond the land borders, but it does have an environmental impact. It does have an impact on the reputation of the company concerned that accidentally or otherwise led to the spill. And obviously, there is a vast lot of loss of resources. So, what's your view?
Maruf, I'm not an expert on the management of oil spills and other natural or accidental disasters or man-made disasters which might occur in the process of exploration, production, etc., and distribution, transportation of oil and natural gas. But certainly, the problem can be tackled through a wider matrix of combining security, safety, resilience, and continuity programs. Now, all these must be written down so that crisis management becomes a central part of the planning of any facility. So these would come within the realm of crisis management.
Okay.
And some of these areas may not be easy to manage. For example, we had this 2000 and the initial 1991 when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. He burned nearly 8,800 oil fields while retreating, and that took around 6 months to douse out with all the expertise that was available probably around the globe.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Bansal, there are at least 8 authorities that oversee different aspects of safety in the oil and gas sector. What's your view? Is it too much or too little?
I would say that, when we go back to the, let's say, the history of Indian oil and gas sector, starting as much as they started in US more than 100 years back, and the oil sector has evolved today when India is already, going into the drilling of so-called high temperature, high pressure vessel also. But along the, entire journey, different authorities have come up. Like, for example, onshore drilling is looked after by the Director General of Mines and Safety, whereas, the refining and marketing terminals are looked by the PESO, and there are some other agencies. And today, when you find that the oil industry is no longer an oil and gas industry, I'll say hydrocarbon industry, the other fuels are also joining, like biofuel blending in the gasoline, etc. So lines are getting blurred. CNG is coming up in a big way. LNG for transportation is also coming in a big way. Petrochemical integration is also there. So my feeling is that as much as integrated safety management through a single authority, if it is possible, it should be possible, will be more effective rather than having multiple agencies and conflicting with each other.
Okay, so that's very well brought out, and we are still in a stage of evolution. But we'll be back after a break to look at some of the other safety and security challenges to the oil and gas sector, which includes cybersecurity threats as well as other technology-related threats which could stall the growth of the oil and gas industry in India, but that after a break. Welcome back. We are looking at the threats and the safety and security challenges that the Indian oil and gas industry faces. Mr. Mehra, this is a question that I'm sure you are best placed to answer. That in 2016, the Intelligence Bureau warned the government that there is a need to beef up security at oil and gas installations after some conversations with Pakistanis and their terror elements posted in India were picked up, and these people were being encouraged to look at the oil companies and the possibility of engaging with some kind of attacks to the oil and gas industry. So there is this element of Pakistan which will always be there in our security calculation. And equally important is the fact that a lot of militant groups that operate in central India, many of the pipelines run through those areas. So I'm not asking you to be specific, but what general measures that you would recommend for oil and gas companies to adopt to deal with such challenges which are not going to go away in a hurry?
Maruf, the threat to oil resources is ever existing. Now, take our case. We have resources and assets which are either maritime or on the coastline. Now look at Jamnagar, for example, our refinery there. It produces almost refined products, that is petroleum, and its capacity is 1.25 million barrels a day, which is almost a fifth of our entire consumption. Now this refinery is extremely important to us. Now I take the parallel on the other side of an attack on a refinery or an oil processing unit located in Saudi Arabia in Abqaiq. This happened around 2006 when Al-Qaeda terrorists attacked Abqaiq, but unsuccessfully because Abqaiq had already been hardened. And post that attack, Abqaiq has turned into almost a military cantonment. So the kind of steps that you take have to be related to the kinds of vulnerabilities that you have and the kind of impact those vulnerabilities will have on the economy or on the national security if they were to materialize. So you have this upcake as a militarized solution to a security problem, with the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Navy, chopper patrols, and a hardening of the facility itself, an extreme hardening of the facility having been done. Now, in the case of Jamnagar, we face a similar kind of a threat, or could face a potential threat from known sources. And after 26/11, we need to be careful about seaborne attacks. Now, this kind of information which came up in 2016 had earlier come up in 2012. So if Jamnagar is so important to us as a refining facility and has such huge capacity in refining, then we need to take solutions as per the threat perception. The solutions have to be cost effective. But in case you require to put in all the national resources, I mean, you do not deploy them on the ground, but you need to amalgamate all the national resources to be able to protect that area which you consider extremely important, then you have to do it like Upcake. And I may add that Upcake has a capacity of processing oil to the tune of 7.5 million barrels a day, which is more than our consumption in India at 4.5 million barrels a day. So they have gone in, and it is so vital to the Saudi economy itself.
You've answered my second question in your answer itself. As I was saying that as Upcake is so vital to the Saudi economy, Jamnagar and similar refineries are very vital to our economy. And I don't think we can keep a distance. I mean the government of India can keep a distance from a private initiative or a private refinery saying that, I'm sorry, this is your venture, it's profit making for you, so you have to invest in the security. There is no way that even the most wealthy private companies in the country can produce the kind of professionalism and security cover that armed force, a police force, or use of the police and intelligence agencies that can bring to bear in a situation where something is like a national asset. So I think there is a need for the government to adopt a more engaging policy with those who own refineries and produce products for us, to say that where can more the government come in to facilitate the security setup instead of just leaving it to them that you're at God's mercy.
I fully agree with you on that. And that is why the private sector, which is perhaps manifestly not as well protected as the public sector, needs to be brought into the security loop. And like I have always emphasized, that can only be done under a national strategy.
Right.
A national strategy, a national plan. In this case, it has to be a sectoral plan for ONG. And so that whatever plans and contingency provisions that we have are basically homogeneous across the private and the public sector. And there is no distinction between the two, and the government has to help the private sector with certain capabilities which they do not have.
Right. So, Mr. Bansal, sir, I'm sure you have something to say on this, and you had something to say also about the oil spill instance which I brought out earlier. But also a third quick one to be thrown in, that the risk of fires at oil facilities is again a major challenge. And linked with that is the electrical sensitivity of installations to fires. So, you may like to throw a bit of light on all these issues.
Let me answer first the last question which you have posed regarding the fire and electrical sensitivity. See, oil installation, especially when we talk of downstream oil installation first, refinery, marketing installations, etc., they are all governed under the so-called PESO laws. Petroleum rules are there, and explosive rules are there under those laws, which well detailed define the fire and safety protection system which these installations should have. But beyond that, industry as its own, you can say self-imposed discipline. There is a directorate of Petroleum and Natural Gas Ministry called Oil Industry Safety Directorate, and which has laid, plenty of, standards in practically each and every field, including what kind of firefighting protection philosophy the industry should adopt. Generally, in the Indian scenario, all the downstream industry, they prepare for the so-called double fire contingencies, 2 fires fighting simultaneously, and they have their firefighting network, and also the water storage, pumping sets, the extinguishers, etc., all ready for 2 contingency fire systems, and they're all as a regular practice, they are maintained and checked every day, and they are, they have a standard philosophy of, having the fire drills also once in a periodical time, a month or so that their readiness at any point of time is not there. So at least on that account, I'll say the hardware-wise, policy-wise, or you can say the preparedness-wise, there is no issue as far as the firefighting is concerned. But let's not be very complacent on this. We have to continue to improve the technology as it is coming in the world also.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, a quick question. Cybersecurity, new emerging area of threats, and particularly in the light of the challenges that it poses, most countries have some kind of industrial cybersecurity standards in place, but these are not uniformly adopted. So what are the best measures you think that we should take to ensure that cyber attacks on oil and gas installations are reduced or minimized or made non-effective?
You see, what has happened is that the dependence of the oil and gas industry on ICT, as well as the amalgamation of new technologies such as robotics, analytics, and IoTs. These have opened the gateway for a lot of cyber attacks to occur. In fact, cyber attacks are occurring. I was just reading an article that in the Arabian Gulf, the loss last year tantamounted to $1 billion in terms of just cyber attacks. And we all know of the 2012 incident when the Saudi Aramco lost all its computers, almost 30,000 computers. The hardware was wiped out, and they suffered a huge decline in production. So cyber security is going to be a concern of the future. Right now, there has been no major attack, no major cyber attack. It's been confined to criminality and hacktivism. Criminality, as you know, is for profit. Hacktivism is for basically motivated by those guys who indulge in it for ego. But what I fear are state-sponsored attacks, which in fact is the only way to develop that capability which can distinguish which are the nodal points in a establishment which need to be affected to either halt production or to sort of disable it for a long period of time.
Okay. So we're terribly short of time, sir, but I'm much enlightened with both your expert views. The takeaway for us from this show, where the two experts have brought out various points, primarily one is that those oil and gas installations which are hugely contributing to the nation and the nation's economy become the responsibility of the nation also in providing protection to them in cohesion with the private owners and the industry that runs it. And equally important is that the nature of threats continues to change, continues to evolve, and if we are going to be able to guard this vital sector, we have to be one step ahead of the challenges. Thank you very much for being with us on this show. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, goodbye.